Hey everyone, my name's Jarie Bolander, and welcome to the Next Decision podcast. Today, it is my honor and a thrill, actually, to talk with Seymour Duncker, executive strategist here at DC and founder of MindScale AI.
Jarie, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I know we've been working on a lot of AI stuff, and it's just amazing the amount of knowledge that you have, and just like you've been helping us here at Decision Counsel really craft our AI strategy. And I know that's a huge buzzword bingo nowadays. Everyone's like AI, 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 but you literally actually do stuff with it, and you've helped us do a lot of really cool things. So before we sort of dive into all that, I would just really love if you could just give us a quick background of where you're from, what you've been doing, and how you got on this crazy AI train.
Oh, totally, totally. Look, I have been on the AI bandwagon around about 2018 when I exited my prior startup, and then there was a great time. It was Vision had just come up, Vision AI, and so I wanted to pursue that. And that was around about the time that the transformer, I'll just use a technical term here, the transformer came out, and everybody today knows what the transformer is, or mostly everybody knows. It's basically the thing behind ChatGPT and everything large language models. That was born in 2018, but that was not the big thing in 2018. In 2018, the big thing was vision recognition and vision detection. So dove into that, and yeah, been on that AI rodeo ever since.
Rodeo,
Ever since, yeah,
like
it is like
circus, right?
you kind of like learn a new thing, and you think after a certain time you kind of ramp up, and you go through this initial phase of um, drinking from the fire hose, right? I feel that never stops with AI.
It feels that way, right? Like I know, we've been working together for a couple years, and just I know, and we have these strategic offsites that we go to every year. And I just remember, like, every time you would present, like, this is the state of AI, you would show this curve, which was this incredible growth curve for like all of this stuff. And it's just like, yeah, who knows where it's going to end. And, like if you're on a sales and marketing team, like what we do, you're at a company, you're hearing all these terms like agentic AI and what's the new one that's like MCP, or I don't even, like so many buzzword bingo type things. And I'm just curious, like, how do you sort out what's real and what's not real? I know you're very technical, which is, I think, helpful. But for the people like us in sales and marketing at companies, how do we sort through like what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to? Any guidance on that?
Yeah, that's a good one. So, like the way I approach things is I need to get my hands on it and see how real it is, right? So there is clearly the we've got a new technology, right? Like when Transformer came out, right? That's if you and you have to be very technical to understand at that early stage what that technology actually could do and what it doesn't mean, right? But that allows me to assess, okay, here's something new coming out that down the stream can generate real benefit, right? So I think that's sort of like that early phase. And then you have maybe 1 to 2 years until this early technology translates into real applications, real benefit, right? And then somewhere along the lines, a lot of people catch on to it, and that's when the hype starts, right? So everything under the sun becomes AI, and that's where you have to start sorting through. Is like, okay, what is real here? What is a slap on? What is just basically the old thing refreshed with a new label? And that's actually hard, right? That's actually a very hard to translate. I think at that point you have to get down to understanding, ROI, show me real applications, try to measure ultimately what it translates to and how does it really, really improve materially whatever it is you're trying to improve. And that's how you assess at that stage. post, like working through the hype to real game-changing applications.
Yeah. No, we've been finding that as well. I mean, a lot of our clients ask, how do I use this? Is it really the panacea? Am I really going to be able to have virtual SDRs or AI SDRs? Is my marketing team going to be more efficient? Do I even need to hire marketing anymore? Like for that matter, right? And to your point, yeah, I mean, we always try to look at it like, okay, where's the return? What's the real problem you're trying to solve? And one of the things that we found is that in order to really understand if this can solve your problem, you actually have to understand the problem and you actually have to know what good is, which I think a lot of this hype stuff is like pretty, I mean, it's like anything, like new technology hypes a lot, but AI hype has just been like astronomically crazy, especially around things like, what we've been looking at is this whole idea of agentic AI. I was wondering if you could just like describe what agentic AI is and then, kind of like how or why this is the newest thing. And again, maybe it's going to fall by the wayside, but there seems to be been a progression between, like what you talk about these, models, and then it sort of has been escalating to a point where, now agentic AI is a thing. Could you explain that a little bit?
Totally. And it kind of fits into what I mentioned earlier, right? So you have this something new comes out, then you have this phase where you're building first kind of prototypes, and then you hit this point where suddenly it turns hype, and then the question is, when does it actually translate? So agentic, first of all, is the number of papers that came out in end of 2023, beginning of 24. The first frameworks emerged, and essentially what agentic means is letting the AI make its own autonomous decisions, right? Just to let me translate that, right? So when you basically go into ChatGPT and say, hey, here is a lead, right? Or here is a customer profile, and this is what this customer has expressed. Should I pursue this or not? Right? Now, now basically ChatGPT will give you a response and will give you an assessment, and it actually will tell you, yes, you should, no, it doesn't make sense, and it will give you reasoning for that, right? Now, that's a decision point that the LLM is doing. And the question is, are you going to act on it? If you act on it in a programmatic way, right? Basically put this into code and take a subsequent action, then that's what the atomic version is of agentic, right? Basically letting the LLM decide a step and then having methods to implement that, right? So you see this in ChatGPT today, for example, search the web. You type something, if you activate the search the web feature, and it decides on its own whether it has enough context, and if not, it'll start searching the web, and that's an independent action. It is actually making a decision to take and pursue. That's sort of like at the core of agentic. And now, and sort of like 23, uh, we found out that you actually could elicit this kind of behavior from, by pure prompting and interacting with large language models. Now the question becomes, how do we build this into real applications? How broad of workflows can you actually automate, right? That's at the heart of where we can potentially think about automating more and more of these workflows to a level that is unseen.
Wow. So truly kind of like, I mean, I think the most physical example is the autonomous cars, as they're driving around, they're making decisions. There's no really human in the loop to make those decisions. Would that be a good analogy for where this could go in terms of making decisions based on inputs? I mean, I think the best example for like sales and marketing professionals is intent data. Like, is someone really want to buy my stuff, right? Would the autonomous vehicle be like a good example of like kind of how to think about it?
Well, yes and no, because originally the whole idea of agentic comes exactly out of this world. So in that case, in that scenario, yes, absolutely right. Like the whole concept of agentic has been actually a pretty old concept, and it comes from another field in AI. It's called reinforcement learning, right? Now, now you transfer that to the world of large language models and everything text based, and this is where we get into the marketing field, right? So I would maybe take more of an example where you have, um, you know, I mean, you can apply the idea of autonomous vehicles where driving decisions are being made. So yes, absolutely, but transfer that idea into a completely text and document based world, right? So you have lead scoring, I think is a fantastic example, right? You essentially have leads coming in, and typically they would reside in one system, and then you would have hardwired rules which leads are leads and what are not leads, or web traffic on a website, right? Today, the only way how to translate that is to hardwire every single combination what potentially constitutes a lead. And that can become pretty complex to a level that you have to constantly fine tune, and somebody has to do these very hard wired decision trees that does that, right? All of that now you can package into an agentic framework and say, okay, let the agentic AI discover what the right approach is.
So basically, wow. So instead of writing all these rules, you basically, it figures out what the rules should be based on either what you've told it roughly or its experience, or, hey, I've listened to 25 sales calls, and hey, when the prospect says this, it means this, therefore you should follow up this way. Or to your point about the incoming leads, like on a website, hey, however, that this person has signed up for this, done this, done this, done this, hey, maybe it's time to reach out with this particular piece of content or this particular thing. And instead of you hard coding the rules, it just sits there and figures it out, like almost like a junior analyst or a really smart 12-year-old. I guess. I don't know. I mean, did I get that right?
Yeah, no, totally. So I think the best way to think about it is, and it's a little bit of an adjacent field to marketing, but one that I'm super deeply involved with is in the medical field, right? So
Ah,
you have
medical. Yeah, good
these
point. Yeah.
yeah, you have these like medical policy documents that are super complex, and all of them contain, at the end of the day, decision criteria, whether a particular medical condition is met or not, or whether insurance companies will deem a certain condition as medically necessary or not, right? And it is impossible to codify all of these variations of these criteria. And it turns out that large language models are actually extremely effective in extracting these decision trees out of these unstructured documents. So that's one component of agentic, where you basically say is, okay, I don't have to hard code rules anymore. I just describe, and let me transfer that to the marketing context, right? So as we just said, lead scoring, right? Um, or account based marketing, right? So for example, here's a general profile, right? Figure out what would be, given these recent events, what would be a right message to um, you know the prospects, and segment that by you know segment those, right? So typically, traditionally, you would require a lot of hardwiring rules, trying to get every edge case. All of that goes away.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean that's a big problem, for go-to-market motions in general. Like, I think one of the things that people really struggle with, you mentioned account-based marketing or ABM, just like, okay, who do we need to talk to? So what's the total available market of the people? Well, first off, what's the total available market of people we could talk to? Second of all, that's huge depending on the market. How are we going to like craft motions and content and an outreach sequence, as an example, to really cater to the needs of specific people. I mean, this is the whole personalization thing, which I think is takes that to the extreme. But I think the first step in that, which seems to be, I don't know if it's the killer use case, probably one of them for this sort of stuff for sales and marketing professionals, especially trying to get to new markets and try to get new prospects, is basically sorting out how to segment, who to talk to in your big market, what are the signals that say interact, and then what to say. Would I know that's simple because I'm a simple guy, but that seems like a very powerful way to go because traditionally that's all done manually or spreadsheets or all these rules or I mean, and I think the other thing that's I think I find interesting is that all this data is like everywhere. You've got your CRM, you've got your outreach tool, you've got your intent engine, you got your I mean, it's just like this data is everywhere. Does this sort of solve that where you just like feed it all in and go, tell me what to do?
Yes, and let me actually break this down into sort of like a map, right? Because I think what you perfectly described is the first stage or the front end of the process, right? Where you essentially want to ideally you have all these sources, you suck those sources in, and you are getting assistance in figuring out a strategy, right? So that's I think a key first part of it. But if you truly think about agentic, right, there's a next step beyond that, right? So, and this first part is already super valuable, right? But
Oh
the
yeah.
next
Oh my
step
gosh. Yeah.
then, right? So the next step is and that's a real problem today is how to make it actionable, right? Because now the ops work starts, right? Great, we have a strategy. Now we have to feed those campaign machines, right? We have to craft all of those messages. We have to coordinate all of these things. Now you're translating strategy into actions, right? And so that's where I think we're still like very very early stage on the agentic journey, because it is putting this into practice is actually not that simple as it
Oh
sounds.
no, it's really
But
hard.
that's yeah.
It's really
No,
hard.
and that's
It's
the
really
point.
hard.
That's the point. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm super deep into all things of the agentic field, and that's sort of like the takeaway. It's great. It from my vantage point, it's real, but it's actually hard to put into practice, right? But if you put it into practice, you get true automated workflows where you can inject into and then run these workflows.
Yeah, it's not the hype does not match the reality sometimes for sure. We found that working together. And it's yeah, it's just it's really and it is scary for a lot of people. Like all the clients we talk to, and we talk to a lot. We have a lot of great clients that are, and then a lot of them are in tech fields. They're like very sophisticated software, hard. Like they kind of know what they're doing, right? But this sort of stuff's just going so fast that wow, it's like trying to keep up, as I said before, is really hard. So, I mean, what are some of the skills do you think that sales and marketing professionals need to sort of start learning? Like is it just like learn how to do prompts? I mean, prompts is now so passé. You don't even hear about prompts anymore. It's like, what's that? But yeah, what are some of the skills? I know obviously technical if you could do it, but like if you're non-technical and you sort of want to work with this stuff and you want to understand it and you want to really be ready to adopt whatever comes out of all the thrash, what are those skills, do you think?
Yeah, and it's going to sound funny, I think, and starting to doing this intuitively, right? But I think we're reaching a certain level of symbiosis with our, at least I'm sure everybody is doing as they're using ChatGPT, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
yeah.
learning to trust, right? So
Interesting.
because
Learn to trust.
because I think it's like a huge challenge in adopting agentic AI, and is essentially the willingness to let go of a certain degree of control, right? So we used to have two forms of control, right? Human to human, we can kind of like we know how to, there's a lot of, randomness there, but we know how to deal with that, right?
Yes,
And
true. Yeah.
with regards to computers, it's super scripted, basically
Yeah.
code, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what we're learning now is how to let go and let trust the computer with, what I would call at this point micro decisions, right?
Interesting. Okay. Micro decisions. All
and
right.
and make it might and make sure and build this into a chain of decisions that ultimately give you control over the entire flow, while letting you know the LLMs, the computer, the AI make its micro decisions along the way, right? So you want to have this bounded way of doing that. I think learning to trust that, and I think especially in larger organizations where you have, you know probably a lot of, grown, thinking, in that respect, I think that's going to be actually hard to break through, right?
Yeah.
So
Grown thinking. That's a good way to say bureaucracy, right?
yeah, I was trying to word it.
Yes, the bureaucratic morass.
Yeah,
I
right.
love it. I love it. Interesting.
Yeah.
So these like micro decisions, learn to trust, chain of decisions. I think really, like the way I put it is guardrails. Like, what are the guardrails you're going to put in place that are going to help you with this? And then I also think, at least in my experience, and I'd love your experience with this, it's like, can you really write down the process you need to follow? I know what you're doing at MindScale AI, right? The whole with the healthcare thing. I think when you showed us the demo of it, you're like, look, this is like 85 or I don't know, some crazy number of individual micro decisions and micro tasks just to get this output. And like you're like, this took a lot of time. This is not like, here you go ahead, la la, be free. It was really a lot of work. So putting in the guardrails, and then I think really understanding the process. What do you think about that?
Yes, and I think it's two layered, right? So it's a combination of where do you let the LLM, you know, guard itself, right? So, you know, to this example, yes, let's say you have this application and you have this, it takes 150 calls, large language model, ChatGPT interactions just through an API and programmatic, right? Um, to run this entire process, like what we're doing at MindScale for the medical field. But a significant number of those are basically control loops, right? Where one decision is being made, and then we have a subsequent one checking on the prior decision, right? And large
Interesting.
language
Okay.
models fail, right? So, I mean, again, this is sort of like the secret on prompting, right? You
Right.
can have, you can have a lousy prompt. A lousy prompt, if you run the same thing 10 times, will fail 4 out of 6 times, right? A really, really, really
Oh,
good
we've done.
prompt
Yep. I've
will
Yeah,
fail,
I've done that.
you know that, right? So a
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
good
Yeah. Yeah.
prompt will fail maybe once out of 10 times, right? That's when
Yes.
but it will fail. Like it's
It will fail.
statistical,
Yes.
right? As I said.
It,
So you have to account
exactly.
for
100.
how do you catch this one time, and basically one approach is building in control loops. That's the one thing. The second super important piece, good for us humans, is the human in the loop, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
again, I I truly believe that we're entering the symbiotic world, right? Where essentially our evolved role is becoming a human in the loop into these agentic processes, where the
Yeah.
system autonomously comes up, in one of two fashions. One, the system says, okay, I can't resolve that, right? Let me ask the human. And the human
Hmm.
then gets a question and is asked to respond to, pretty much like when you ask your superior, hey, I need to run this by you, right?
Right. 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 Right.
The second one is essentially where we have guardrails. I love your term, is where we built in certain guardrails and bounding parameters. Is if we start to breach them, we halt the agentic process and have a human in the loop validate that and augment that. And
Right.
what's great is all the new technologies that are coming out, frameworks and all of that actually support exactly this kind of human in the loop, seamless processing, right?
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, we're doing a bunch of stuff here at Decision Counsel, a bunch of workflows, and you've been part of it as well. And yeah, the frustration has always been, at least for me, and I'm sure the people I work with, like, yeah, it can go off the rails pretty fast. Like, if you don't bound it with the guardrails, if you don't properly prompt, and if you don't understand the process, it will go off on like crazy stuff. And it's not hallucinating. I think that's the thing that we are now kind of away from. That it's not hallucinating. What it's actually doing is it's trained to be confident. So it's giving you like, this is what I think, and my job is to be confident in my answer. Now it's up to the human in the loop, which I love that term. Is this what I want? Like, if you don't know what you want and you don't know what good is, this thing will produce the craziest stuff. And so what we found is that we have to break down processes and break down steps into these. I love these micro tasks or micro decisions. And you're right, we have to check them, and then we have to set the guardrails. And if it goes outside the guardrails, like, you better stop and get someone and get a human in the loop, because we are going off track really quick, right? Like, it's pretty horrible. And I think, if you're a sales and marketing professional listening to this and you want to improve your skills to use this agentic AI stuff, anything related to automation and systems, like, that'll help you, the skill that I feel is the most important is being able to write very clear, concise, and compelling instructions, breaking down a process into its constituent parts, and literally know what good is. Like, if you don't know what good is, like, you're doomed. So, and what's interesting, you're an engineer and I'm a recovering engineer, right? I went to the dark side of marketing. Like, if you have an engineering mindset, this is a lot easier, right? Because we're used to writing processes and procedures. So I'm just like, one, I wanted to validate that I'm like thinking about the right way. And two, anything else on that kind of advice for people?
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect way of how to position this, right? Or basically phrase it. It is really the ability to like you would write a standard operating procedure or policy, or basically you're onboarding a new employee, or you instructing your new intern of what to do, is you will want to bring it down to a certain level of specificity. And that's exactly understanding. I think we understand this very well in sort of in the human to human world, right? Understanding that that's actually the same way how we would then instruct
With the
these
machine.
systems to do
Yeah.
it, right? The machine to
Interesting.
do it,
Yeah, that's a good
and
point.
not much difference, 100%. So I think it's that transfer, right? Because we think that we have to work with the machines very differently. Actually, we don't. I think there's a second piece of the hype cycle. So I think we now, because things seem to be becoming so much more simpler, computers can code and everything's going to be click of a button, right? So building an agentic system is anything. It's actually a pretty complex thing. It's anything but a click of a button, right? So I think the second skill is to be able to work together in teams with those people that have the technical skills, right? And understand how do we construct these new type of applications that basically combine what you just described, Jarie, is this kind of like instruction giving to the sequence of steps that we need to do to build a complete whole. I think there's a third item, going back to the human in the loop thing, right? Um, it is more than human in the loop is not something we have at the beginning of the process, right? I think we have to build systems that are operational, right? I know we have been talking, for example, about ABM, right? Operational systems that run this, these operational systems will have human in the loop components, right? So how do we construct that? How do we how does the system autonomously flag, I need, raise their hand, I need a supervisor to overlook this, right? Actually, when we built the agentic system, when we actually built the agentic system, we use the supervisor construct, right? Where we basically say, okay, escalate to supervisor, right? And the supervisor could be a human, could be an LLM, right?
Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. Like it could be another system that just checks that system, like a redundancy, like what they do on like rockets and stuff. Like as a total aside, like in any kind of guidance system, even on airplanes, there's like triple redundancy just in case, something goes wrong and they vote. Oh, I see this, I see this, I see this. Okay, let's go with that. Like, so that's the reason why airplanes don't fall out of the air. So interesting idea. Yeah, that's super cool. Huh. Okay. I like that. I like that. It just seems like it's just, I mean, interact with it like you'd interact with a human. Like, you don't have to do anything special. It's just you have to really think of it as a coworker. I mean, sometimes annoying coworker, but coworker nonetheless. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's a little weird.
Actually, as a matter of fact, it may feel a little weird right now,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I trust me, in maybe 2 to 3, 4 years, it won't be weird at
It,
all that
it
we have
probably won't be.
agentic, or whatever you want to call it, whatever it's going to be called then, right? Agentic
Right.
AI. Maybe we just have, given it human names, right? You
Maybe.
know,
I mean, it'll be
this
interesting. It'll be
Jarie
interesting.
2.0, right?
Synthetic Jari. Oh my God. They don't
Yeah,
need another one
yeah,
of me. I think
yeah.
everyone at the office would be like, not another, please, not another Jari.
Yeah.
So what do you think, the next 12 months? I mean, is there any way to predict what the next 12 months in AI is going to be? Or is it just like, hold on, it's a rocket ship?
Now, well, like, I think any prediction is sort of like fraught, right? I mean,
Exactly.
like the other day we were discussing is, we were debating quality of image generators, right? For a
Correct.
quite time, and
Yes.
not there, not there, and suddenly,
Yep.
boom, like huge step function up, and now
Massive.
they seem to have made a huge jump forward. So I think it's hard to predict, but I would say, sort of big picture is we've reached the end of the bigger, better model is going to fix everything, right?
Right.
I mean, for the
Right.
simple fact is, we're already training on the entire internet, right? And there's no more data to be trained on. So having a bigger
That's
model that
true.
can process more data, right? Not going to
Doesn't
happen,
matter. Yeah.
right? So I
It's like,
think,
yeah. Wow.
yeah, exactly. So basically, I think you have a race to commoditization, right? So these
Mm.
OpenAI, and
Mm.
actually recently I saw a stat is that turns out that the Google Gemini 2.5 Pro models are now the state of the art, and have surpassed the OpenAI models, right? So I think we're going to see that race, and it doesn't
Yep.
matter what models you use. You can be in the open source camp, you can be in the whatever camp you want to be, and it's all about building applications. I think that we are in a hype phase around AI agents right now. I think a lot of things what people are calling AI agents are actually not AI agents, right?
Nope. 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 Nope.
Nope. But so I think what we'll have over the next 12 months is true applications that are really disruptive, right? And they'll bubble up here and bubble up there, and watching out for those. I think that's a game changer. And I think, agentic applications are going to take off in a big way sooner or later as we figure them out.
So, as we always like to say on the Next Decision podcast, what is the next decision you have to make at MindScale AI? Like, what are some of the things you're thinking about that, are immediately need attention? So,
Perfect segue. Perfect segue. So I am, we are ready with go to market, and we are spinning up go to market now. So I'm now thinking deeply about how do I spin up a, go to market action without not in the traditional way, right? I candidly don't want to hire a bunch of people, right? What I want to do is use the combination of everything that's out there in sales and marketing to automate the outbound as well as inbound handling, and that's my next step. Figuring out how to use agentic AI, for example, that next step of my journey.
Look at that. Like, how cool, right? Yeah, no, and of course, we're involved to help as we can, right? Because this is like something that's really top of mind for a lot of our clients. And one of the reasons, is great to talk to you and really appreciate your time. Seymour, it's a pleasure as always. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. So yeah, good luck with MindScale, and I can't wait to see like the next check-in. Even in 6 months, it'll be like some crazy stuff, right? It's always nutty that way. I don't know why, but the hype curve is just accelerated. It's like someone's been drinking too much coffee and they kept going.
Yeah, Jarie, no, absolutely, Jarie. I can't wait for it. It's kind of it's continues to be extremely exciting times, and yeah, and no rest for the weary.
No rest for the weary. That's right. I hope everyone got a lot out of that, like I did. Please tune in, subscribe, and all that sort of great stuff. And we will see you next time on the Next Decision Podcast.